XM Studios, a well-known statue company out of Singapore, has dabbled in a little bit of everything. Obviously Marvel and DC, Samurai DC, Magic the Gathering, Godzilla, Transformers, Star Wars, anime, and since they have licenses to so many lines, and I can only imagine the boardroom meeting that produced this Iron Maiden piece. Hey Mr. President, I have an idea. How about heavy metal band album covers? Do it. As the Extreme channel is pushing towards 50,000 subscribers, these are just a few of the statues we're giving away on the journey there. If you want to know how to win one, stay tuned for later in the video. Hey, welcome to the Extreme channel. My name is Mr. X. Today we're reviewing a quarter scale statue from XM Studios. This is probably the first of its kind in the large licensed statue arena. This is from the very well known, at least my generation and even my father's generation, and even some people today, heavy metal band Iron Maiden. And while I never thought I would own a statue that is based off of a band, here he is in the flesh. So this is specifically from Iron Maiden's 2016 tour. It was some artwork on a cover that produced this guy. Now I saw him in person 3 years ago, actually almost exactly 3 years ago from today. And I thought he was absolutely amazing. And here he is. He did not disappoint. He's a very rare statue. We're going to talk all about that today in an Extreme review. So with that being said, this is Eddie, that's his name, on a flying Chinese dragon. Again, it's from their 2016 Book of Souls tour. And I'm going to be honest with you. Who doesn't like Iron Maiden? I like Iron Maiden. However, they only have a few songs on my hit list. So it's not like I bought this out of homage to the band. I just bought it because it's a cool freaking statue. And you know what's really interesting is, in about a week or so, you're going to see me talk about statues that I sell and why I sell them. And one of the reasons I sell them is because I don't have that much attachment to the source material. But yet, I still bought it. Here he is. So we might as well as do a review. Let's kick it off with concept. Now, to my knowledge, there wasn't an album cover that had this statue. This was just a character in some of their album covers that XM Studio and a collaboration with a company called Divine actually put together. And I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. However, I always say that to Mrs. X and I always end up being wrong. So let's just look at it for what it is. On the bottom, there is a rock-like base. And probably the reason this is here is to help insinuate the flying aspect of the dragon. But his tail is wrapped all the way around it. And one of the things you're going to find with the dragon is he has kind of like a lion's mane coming from the back of his head, and it goes all the way down his back, and you can see it circle around the tail to the tip, where kind of that mane of feathers or fur is actually coming out. But towards the top of the rock, you have the dragon setting on it, and like I said, I think this is supposed to give you kind of a flying effect, and I think it works pretty well, actually. Clearly, we couldn't make him hover in real life, although that would be a badass statue that does that. And the dragon, you can see the 4 appendages. And Eddie is on his back. Eddie is on his back ready to go to war. Eddie has this huge scythe or sword in his left hand. His right hand, he's actually holding on to the mane. It's not like he has reins or anything like that. Eddie looks incredibly badass. He's almost like a half-dead, half-alive person. His badassery is only equaled by the badassery of the dragon, who is roaring. And he has horns and shit coming out of his nose. I assume they're flames, or I don't know what the hell that is. Maybe he has a cold. But this looks incredibly cool. It's a very dynamic statue. It's badass. Like I said, even with very little attachment to the source material, or even zero attachment, you can still say, I really appreciate the concept of this. It's neat. And I think I do give them a few more points for going out of the box. This didn't end up being a big seller. We're going to talk about that in value. But I still give the concept a 4 out of 5. Mainly because I like the flying effect, and I like how this really looks different than anything I've seen. Design is pretty genius. While there are a few seam lines that we'll look at, I think they did a good job overall. Here is the unboxing and assembly. One box, standard XM packaging with the normal straps and white foam. The art box did have a picture of the statue on it. It was 2 different layers, so here's the first layer with wax paper on everything. As you can see, quite a few pieces. Then the second layer below had some of the bigger pieces, including the base, dragon head, and Eddie. Now there's no other display options, but as I said, there are a few seam lines, and some places they actually did some stuff to cover it up. Specifically right here. So you saw me attach the tail, but right here there's actually a rock you put on top of it to cover up that nasty seam line on the tail. That was very smart, and there's a rock you put underneath. However, the rock does have a little bit of a seam line. The other seam lines that you can see are actually in the arms of the dragon, more apparent when it's above you like it is right here. But otherwise, everything flows together really well. The mane actually looks like one piece coming all the way down. I give them a lot of props for that. The dynamic aspect of it also falls into design because, you know, it's a lot harder to do. Let's measure him. Now, this is going to be a little difficult. For exact dimensions, you can go to XM Studio's website. But I'm going to say the front is front on. So the widest part of the base is about 12 inches, but the tail increases it to about 17 total inches. And the deepest part, which is probably the back of the mane to the front of the mane, 17.5 inches or so. Then the highest point is the snot coming out of his nose. It actually looks pretty cool. 28 3/4, so say 29 inches or so. So a very big 1/4 scale piece. 1/4 meaning in real life, this character in Dragon would be 4 times larger than this. They didn't have an art print, which was kind of disappointing, although I never use art prints. But since this was kind of conceptually based off a tour and cover, I think that would have been neat. But I'm a fan. I like it. I don't really know what I would change design-wise. I think they did a nice job. So I have to give the design a 5 out of 5. One could argue that it'd be cool to have switch-outs. Maybe he'd have a different weapon in his left arm, but that's a pretty badass weapon. And as we dive into the paint and sculpt, I don't think you're going to say you'd want a different portrait, at least on Eddie. His is kind of the star of the show, in my opinion. Now, what initially caught my eye about this piece is the colors. Not only the use of so many different colors, but just how they kind of meld together and almost tell a story. And if you look at those colors, it's everything from the mane or feathers or fur on the dragon that comes from this really deep orange with almost a metallic red look to it. Then it slowly transitions to that bright metallic yellow. And I love that. It's almost like the review that you're going to see in a few days where I talk about a dragon and fire just coming from the inside to the out. And I think it really tells that story. The colors do. So I think that's awesome. And I think it contrasts so well the dark colors of the base and the dragon. So the mountain looks okay. I mean, I think they could use some more texture to give it more defined rock-like look. Otherwise it kind of blends in. And the colors are a little boring, so I think the sculpt in the colors could be better. But when you move up to the dragon, I love this. I love the metallic scales. I don't think this is like a metallic paint, but somehow it comes off as that. And I don't know if it's a use between the blues and the grays that they put in there, but it looks great. Like you can see right here, almost aquamarine blue. Shows up really well in the light. But then the scales. So it's not like a traditional dragon scales, but you do see scales on there. It's almost like a mix of this exterior rough hide, almost like a rhinoceros, and I think that's great. And I love the sculpt of the dragon. Almost looks like a person transformed into a dragon. You can kind of see some human-like and almost animal-like, especially with his appendages. There's gold colors and silver on his claws, which really match, and it's that metallic paint, so it contrasts really well with the mane. I love the look of that. The feathers, while there is some paint issues, you see that? I think that's kind of expected. It's not forgivable, but a lot of it's on the back in areas you can't see. So while I'm not a fan of that, I think that the sculpt of, whether you want to call this fur or feathers or whatever you want, I think it looks great. I love the individual strands, but it's still clumped together like it's really bushy and full. You know, it goes all the way down to his tail here. Just really impressive. Now the portrait on the dragon, the eyes, there's something with the color I'm just not digging. But the rest of it, other than the horns, I think looks good. The red around the gum line, I think it could have used a little pink to maybe mix it up a little bit. Make him look a little less like a deranged old person who needs dentures. But I think the teeth look nice. Definitely not the shining star of the portrait of the dragon, but it's nice. I mean, it's nothing amazing. Not like we're gonna see when we look at Eddie in a moment. The horns on top look a little plasticky. I think that could have been better. I think it's a mix of the paint and sculpt that does that. Eddie is fantastic though. So his clothing, first of all, it's other than this piece right here, it is all sculpted. However, it flows like mixed media, whether that's the bunches in his outfit or the layering. You have like a rope belt and then a sash around that flying in the wind. Obviously this right here, the sash from the hilt of the sword. And those colors really stand out and pop off each other. So the gold ties to the dragon. The off-red ties to some of the reds we saw in the dragon. Looks really good, and I like the armor, very traditional. Reminds me of like samurai times, and same thing with the blade here. While it's not a metal blade, I think they did a decent job with the paint, taking away that resin look. And there's so much detail in a lot of this stuff. Check that out right there. Or his hand, the blood around his hand bandaged up. Right there where he's holding on to the mane looks great. Check out the laces around, or the rope around his armor on his legs and the leather boots. Even the stitching looks fantastic. And how it's flowing is pretty cool too, so that's a great compliment to the sculpt. And you see a lot of that same on his front torso here. But his portrait is really, in my opinion, the star of this show. It looks great. It looks like a human being with the skull is coming out of the skin, and the skin is kind of old and deteriorated. You see it kind of stretched back. And video really isn't doing this justice, but I absolutely love it. I do like that his eyes match the dragon. Look at that gum line. It's mostly a brown. The brown's not showing up as much with really bright spotlights on it, but it's very dark in general. Let me see if I can go back a little bit. You kind of see that right there. So really a lot of stuff going on here, and while there's definitely some flaws or things I think they could have done better, I think as a whole, it's a winner. Keeping in mind with the paint, I'm kind of, the back where it's kind of speckled on, that's really the only place, so that is a negative. I don't know if they lose a whole point for that. And then some of the rock down here I think could have been better. But I still think the paint is a 5 out of 5 simply for the different things that they did. And it ended up great, especially when I look at Eddie, how clean the paint is on that. There's really not any bleed over or anything like that. Sculpt, incredibly impressive as well. While it's not a perfect sculpt for some of the things we talked about, I still think it's awesome. I'd like to see a little bit different around the dragon's mouth, the rock down here. But that's about it. So I give that a 5 out of 5 as well. Very, very impressive. Now, they put this up for pre-order and they probably had no idea, is there going to be any good value in this? Are collectors going to want this? And who knows? Honestly, the jury's probably still out, but I'm guessing it's sold out because they only made 111 of these. That's it. And I'm speculating there's some type of significance with that number, but maybe there isn't. At least here in the States, shipping and everything all in is about $1,700. Which is a lot of money. However, if you look at this, this is as big as a lot of 1/3 scale characters going for $1,500 to $2,000. Rare concept, low edition size, that's what ES stands for. So I think this definitely has the value. So on my ranking, 3 out of 5 would mean that I could make my money back if I sold it. I definitely think it's a 3 out of 5 at a minimum. It could be a 4 out of 5. I could see some people really liking this, especially people who aren't into collecting like all the statues I have behind me. I think this could reach out into a different pool of customers, whether they like historical Chinese type stuff. Big fan of Iron Maiden. So I definitely think it's a minimum of a 4 out of 5. I think that if you find the right buyer for this, you could definitely make a lot of money. Now, does this have the X factor? Is this a 5 out of 5 statue overall? Oh, that's tough for me. I think that if I knew this character better and I listened to Iron Maiden all the time, this would be a no-brainer. It's a 5 out of 5. But for me, I have to include that hey, X factor is, do I love this statue? Is it one of my favorites? Do I think I'd want to keep this for a very long time and never consider selling it? That's not the case despite how great it is. So I think it's a 4 out of 5. I could definitely see an argument being made for a 5 out of 5 though. What do you guys think? You a fan of this guy? Would you buy him? So many times we've asked the question, hey, would you buy something you don't have any ties to the source material or the intellectual property? Throw that down in the comments below. I love to see you guys interact with each other. I read every single comment, and you could win a statue with that comment. We will be giving all of these statues away, plus additional ones at every 5,000 subscriber milestone. To win one of these statues, all you have to do is make sure you've liked this video, you've subscribed to the channel, you've hit that bell notification, and then just drop a comment below. Every 5,000 subscriber milestone, we are going to do a random drawing and pick a random comment and give one of these statues away, plus some additional ones I'm not showing right now. The more videos you comment on, the higher your chances are to win. Hey, thank you so much. Give a like. If not for me, do it for Eddie. It's free and easy, and it really, really helps the channel. Also, please subscribe if you like stuff like this. We drop content all the time, and you can actually... I'm not going to edit that out. Check out some of these other videos while you wait for that other content. Take care.